The plane went completely silent at 30,000 feet. 156 passengers and 6 crew members were flying from Chicago to Los Angeles on what should have been a normal Tuesday afternoon flight. But in the next 47 minutes, their lives would depend on the smallest person on board. An 11-year-old girl with pigtails and a pink backpack. And soon, she would be sitting in the pilot's seat. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Mia Chen sat in seat 23C, her legs barely reaching the floor. She wore a purple hoodie with her favorite cartoon character on it. Her pink backpack with unicorn patches sat under the seat in front of her. To everyone around her, she looked like any other kid on a flight. The flight attendant, Patricia, smiled down at her. "Traveling alone, sweetie?" "Yes, ma'am," Mia replied politely. "Going to visit my mom in LA." "Well, aren't you brave," Patricia said in that voice adults use when they talk to children. "If you need anything, just press this button, okay honey?" Mia nodded and pulled out her tablet. But she wasn't playing games or watching cartoons like the businessmen next to her assumed. She was studying something else entirely. The man in seat 23B glanced over. He saw diagrams. Numbers. Strange abbreviations. "What are you studying there?" he asked, more amused than curious. "Just some stuff my dad taught me," Mia said quietly. "Looks complicated for a little girl," he chuckled, then went back to his laptop. Mia didn't respond. She had heard comments like this her whole life. Adults always underestimated her. They always would. What neither the businessmen nor anyone else on the plane knew was that Mia had been training for this exact moment for the past 3 years. 3 years earlier, everything changed for Mia when she was just 8 years old. Her father, Captain David Chen, had been a commercial pilot for 22 years. One morning, while preparing breakfast, he collapsed. A massive stroke. The doctors saved his life, but he would never fly again. During his recovery, something shifted in David's mind. The stroke had been sudden, unexpected. It made him think about all the what-ifs in life. "Mia," he said one evening from his wheelchair, "I want to teach you something." "What, Dad?" "I want to teach you how to fly a plane." Mia's mother, Linda, immediately protested. "David, she's 8 years old. This is crazy." "I know it sounds crazy," David said calmly. "But think about it, Linda. I'm a pilot. I nearly died. What if something happens when she's on a plane? What if she could save herself? Save others? That's not realistic," Linda argued. "Maybe not," David admitted. "But what if?" Against her mother's wishes, the training began. Every day after school, David would will himself to his home flight simulator. It was a professional-grade setup he had built in their garage. Multiple screens, real instruments, actual control systems. "Okay, Mia. This is the primary flight display, or PFD. What does it show?" "Altitude, airspeed, heading, and vertical speed," 8-year-old Mia recited. "Good. And this?" "The navigation display, or ND. It shows our route and position." David smiled. His daughter was a quick learner. For 3 years, they trained almost every day. David taught her everything he knew. How to read instruments, how to use autopilot systems, emergency procedures, radio communication, navigation without GPS, and most importantly, how to land a plane. The training was intense and methodical. Every session began the same way. "What's the first thing you check when you enter the cockpit?" David would ask. "Fuel quantity, hydraulic pressure, and electrical systems," Mia would respond. "Good. And if you see a warning light? Identify the system, check the manual, and don't panic." David made her practice scenarios that seemed impossible. Engine fires at 10,000 feet. Complete electrical failure. Hydraulic system collapse. Landing with only one engine. Landing in thick fog with zero visibility. Why do we practice the worst scenarios? David asked her one evening. Because if I can handle the worst, I can handle anything, Mia replied. Exactly. Some nights, David would wake her up at 2 a.m. Emergency landing. You have 5 minutes. Go. Mia would stumble to the simulator, still half asleep, and execute a perfect landing. In a real emergency, you won't be rested and ready, David explained. You need to be able to perform even when you're exhausted, scared, or unprepared. The neighbors thought David was crazy. Linda's friends questioned her parenting. Why are you letting him do this to her, they asked. She should be playing with dolls, not learning to fly planes. But Linda had started to see something change in Mia. Her daughter had become confident, focused, disciplined. She excelled in school because the aviation training had taught her how to study, how to solve problems, how to stay calm under pressure. Linda watched from the doorway sometimes, shaking her head. You're preparing her for something that will never happen. Hopefully never, David agreed. But if it ever does, she'll thank me. The training wasn't just simulator work. David quizzed her constantly. What's the emergency code for communication failure? Squawk 7600. What's the glide ratio of a Boeing 737? Approximately 17:1, which means for every 17 miles forward, we lose 1 mile of altitude. If you're landing with a crosswind, what do? Use the crab technique during approach, then transition to wing-low method just before touchdown. Mia absorbed everything like a sponge. Aviation became her obsession. While other kids her age played video games, she studied flight manuals. While they watched movies, she watched cockpit videos and training documentaries. By age 11, Mia had logged over 800 hours in the simulator. She had practiced more than 200 emergency scenarios. She had landed planes in thunderstorms, with engine failures, with system malfunctions. But she had never touched a real plane. Until today. Flight 2847 had been in the air for about an hour. The seatbelt sign was off. Flight attendants were serving drinks. Everything was perfectly normal. Then the lights flickered. It was subtle. Most passengers didn't even notice. But Mia did. She looked up from her tablet. The lights flickered again. Mia's training kicked in. Electrical fluctuation. Possibly an alternator issue. Could be nothing. Could be something. In the cockpit, Captain Rodriguez noticed it too. Did you see that? He asked his co-pilot. Yeah, probably just a brief power hiccup, First Officer Stevens replied. All systems showing normal. But 3 minutes later, it happened again. Longer this time. Captain Rodriguez frowned. Let me check. He never finished the sentence. A strange smell filled the cockpit. Sweet, almost like almonds. Both pilots noticed it at the same time. Do you smell that? Stevens asked. Rodriguez nodded, but he was already feeling dizzy. The control panel seemed to blur in front of his eyes. Something's wrong, he managed to say. His hands felt heavy. His vision was tunneling. Stevens reached for the radio, but his arm wouldn't cooperate. The microphone slipped from his fingers. In the cabin, the head flight attendant, Patricia, noticed the irregular flying pattern. The plane was starting to drift slightly off course. She picked up the internal phone to call the cockpit. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Stay here, she told the other flight attendant, then walked quickly toward the cockpit door. She knocked. Captain Rodriguez? Silence. She knocked harder. Captain, is everything okay? Nothing. Patricia used her emergency access code and opened the cockpit door. What she saw made her blood run cold. Both pilots were slumped in their seats. Captain Rodriguez's head was tilted back, unconscious. First Officer Stevens had collapsed forward onto the controls. The plane was flying on autopilot, but for how long? Patricia screamed. The scream brought several passengers to their feet. The businessman in 23B stood up to see what was happening. A doctor from row 15 rushed forward. "What's wrong?" the doctor asked. "The pilots," Patricia said, her voice shaking. "They're both unconscious. We need help. Is anyone on this plane a pilot?" Silence. 156 passengers. Not one pilot. Patricia's training kicked in despite her fear. "Okay, we need to stay calm. The plane is on autopilot. We're okay for now. Is there a doctor?" "I'm a doctor," said a man pushing through the crowd. Dr. James Patterson, a cardiologist from Boston. He rushed into the cockpit and checked both pilots. "They're breathing, but unconscious. Heart rates are slow but steady. I don't know what caused this, but they're not waking up." Patricia grabbed the radio. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Flight 2847. Both pilots are incapacitated. We need emergency assistance immediately. Static." She tried again. "Mayday, this is Flight 2847, do you copy?" More static. The communication system had failed. They were flying at 30,000 feet with no pilots and no way to contact the ground. Panic started spreading through the cabin like wildfire. "We're all going to die. Someone needs to fly this plane. What about the flight attendants? Can they fly it?" Patricia's hands were shaking. "I don't know how to fly a plane. I only know basic procedures." That's when a small voice came from the back. Clear. Calm. Certain. "I can do it." Everyone turned. There, standing in the aisle, was Mia Chen. 11 years old. 4 feet 8 inches tall. Wearing a purple hoodie with a cartoon character. The businessman from 23B actually laughed. "Sweetie, now's not the time for jokes." "I'm not joking," Mia said. "My father is Captain David Chen. He trained me for 3 years on flight simulators. I know how to fly this plane." Patricia looked at her like she was crazy. "Honey, I know you're trying to help, but this is serious. We need an adult." "There are no adults who can fly," Mia said calmly. "The autopilot will run out eventually. When it does, this plane will crash. Unless someone takes control." Dr. Patterson looked at the girl, then at the unconscious pilots, then back at the girl. "How old are you?" 11. "But I've logged over 800 hours in a professional flight simulator. I've practiced emergency landings. I know the systems." A woman in a business suit scoffed. "This is insane. We can't let a child fly a commercial jet. There has to be another way." "What other way?" Mia asked simply. "I'm the only person on this plane who knows how to fly." Patricia was torn. This went against every instinct she had. But the girl spoke with such confidence. Such specific knowledge. "What's your name?" Patricia asked. "Mia Chen." "Okay, Mia. Tell me something. What's the emergency code for communication failure?" "Squawk 7600, Mia replied instantly. Patricia blinked. "What, how do you know that?" "I told you. My father trained me. We need to act now. The longer we wait, the more fuel we burn, and the less time we have to land safely." The next 5 minutes were chaos. Half the passengers thought letting Mia into the cockpit was insane. The other half saw no alternative. "She's a child," the businesswoman shouted. "We need to find another solution." "What solution?" Dr. Patterson shot back. "We have no radio. No pilots. And a plane that needs to land. If this girl knows what she's talking about, she's our only chance. Patricia made a decision. Mia, come with me. As they walked to the cockpit, Patricia asked questions. Testing her. What's the primary flight display? Shows altitude, airspeed, heading, and vertical speed. What's LNAV? Lateral navigation. It's an autopilot mode that follows the programmed route. What's your plan if the autopilot fails? Hand fly using the control yoke, manage throttle manually, maintain heading and altitude using the instruments, find the nearest suitable airport, and execute an emergency landing. Patricia's skepticism was fading. This kid knew things. Real things. They reached the cockpit. Mia looked at the instrument panel. It was bigger than the simulator. More intimidating. Real. But it was also familiar. The autopilot is engaged, Mia observed. Mode LNAV and VNAV. We're maintaining 30,000 feet, speed 450 knots. Current heading 245 degrees. Patricia stared at her. How did you know all that so fast? The flight mode annunciator, Mia pointed to a display at the top of the panel. It shows the current autopilot modes. She sat in the captain's seat. Her feet didn't reach the pedals. Her hands barely fit around the control yoke. But her eyes scanned the instruments with practiced efficiency. Okay, Mia said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. First, we need to communicate our situation. The radio is out, but we can use the transponder. She reached for the transponder and set it to 7700, the emergency code. Every air traffic controller watching radar will now know we're in trouble. They'll clear airspace around us and prepare emergency services. Patricia watched in amazement. The child was thinking clearly while she could barely catch her breath. Next, Mia continued, we need to find the nearest suitable airport. The flight plan shows we're headed to LAX, but we might not make it. We need a backup. She studied the navigation display. Las Vegas McCarran International. It's 87 miles ahead. 2 long runways. Good weather. That's our target. I'm going to disengage the autopilot now, Mia announced. Patricia's eyes went wide. Are you sure? We can't stay on autopilot forever. I need to practice controlling the plane before we attempt landing. Mia's small hand reached for the autopilot disconnect button. She remembered her father's words, when you disconnect, the plane is yours. Every movement, every decision. You are the pilot. She pressed the button. A loud beep filled the cockpit. The autopilot annunciator changed. The words, autopilot off, appeared. The control yoke was now live in her hands. Mia felt the weight of the aircraft. It was heavier than the simulator. More responsive. More real. She took a breath and made a small adjustment to the right. The plane responded, banking gently. Okay, she said softly. I've got it. Patricia stood behind her, gripping the seat. What do you need me to do? Watch the instruments. If anything looks wrong, tell me. And I need you to stay calm. If you panic, the passengers will panic. Right. Okay. I can do that. Mia began testing the controls. Small movements. Getting a feel for the aircraft. Back in the cabin, passengers were glued to their seats. Some prayed. Some cried. Some stared out the windows in shock. The businessman in 23B was on his knees. Please, God, let this work. The businesswoman who had protested was now silent, tears running down her face. A mother held her 2 children. It's going to be okay, she whispered, not sure if she believed it. In the cockpit, Mia was calculating. Current altitude, 30,000 feet. Distance to Las Vegas, 84 miles. Fuel remaining, sufficient for 45 minutes of flight. Descent rate needed, approximately 1,500 feet per minute. She began reducing throttle, starting the descent. Descending to 25,000 feet, she announced. The plane's nose tilted down slightly. Patricia gripped the seat harder. Is this normal? Patricia asked, her voice tight. Yes. We need to lose altitude gradually. Too fast and we'll overstress the airframe. Too slow and we won't reach the airport in time. Mia's hands were sweating, but her voice remained calm. Inside, her heart was pounding. This was real. Lives depended on her. She could hear her father's voice in her head, fear is normal, Mia. But you can't let it control you. Trust your training. Trust yourself. 15 minutes later, Las Vegas came into view on the horizon. I can see the city, Mia said. Patricia, I need you to tell the passengers to prepare for landing. Emergency positions. Remove sharp objects. Shoes off. Brace position. Patricia nodded and left the cockpit. Her announcement over the PA system was shaky but clear. Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for an emergency landing at Las Vegas McCarran International Airport. Please follow emergency procedures. Remove shoes, glasses, and any sharp objects. Place your head between your knees and hold your ankles. Stay in this position until the plane comes to a complete stop. The cabin erupted in fresh panic, but flight attendants moved quickly, helping passengers prepare. In the cockpit, Mia was on final approach. Current altitude, 12,000 feet. Distance to runway, 18 miles. Airspeed, 240 knots. She could see the airport now. 2 parallel runways. Emergency vehicles already lining up. Dozens of them. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. All waiting for her. The weight of it hit her suddenly. All those people depending on her. All those emergency responders ready to save whoever survived the crash they expected. Her hands started to shake. No, she said firmly to herself. Focus, Mia. One step at a time. She took a deep breath and continued. Back in the cabin, passengers were watching through the windows. They could see Las Vegas getting closer. The city lights. The airport. A teenage boy in row 18 was recording everything on his phone. His hands were shaking so badly the video was blurry. An elderly woman was praying in Spanish, her rosary beads clutched tight in her wrinkled hands. The mother with 2 children was humming a lullaby to keep them calm, even though she could barely breathe herself. The businessman from seat 23B, the one who had dismissed Mia earlier, was openly crying. Please let her do it, he whispered. Please let that little girl save us. On the ground, air traffic controllers had cleared all other aircraft. Every emergency service in Las Vegas was on standby. Ambulances. Fire trucks. Rescue teams. News helicopters circled at a safe distance. This was being broadcast live across the world now. Millions of people were watching. Holding their breath. This was unprecedented. An 11-year-old girl attempting to land a commercial jet with 162 people on board. Mia lined up with runway 26L, the longest runway at McCarran. Over 14,000 feet. She would need every inch of it. 10,000 feet. Extending flaps to 5 degrees. The flaps began extending from the wings, creating more lift and drag. The plane slowed. 8,000 feet. Flaps to 15 degrees. The plane slowed more. Mia adjusted the throttle, maintaining the descent rate. 6,000 feet. Gear down. She reached for the landing gear lever and pulled it down. A mechanical whirring sound filled the cockpit as the wheels extended beneath the aircraft. 3 green lights appeared on the panel. Gear down and locked, Mia confirmed. Her hands were trembling now, but she kept them steady on the yoke. 4,000 feet. Flaps to 30 degrees. Final approach speed, 140 knots. The runway was getting closer. Larger. More real. Mia could feel every muscle in her body tensed. This was it. Everything her father had taught her came down to the next 3 minutes. 2,000 feet. The plane was descending through the desert air. The runway filled the windscreen ahead. Mia's mind was racing through the checklist. Airspeed. Altitude. Descent rate. Alignment. Everything had to be perfect. She glanced at the wind indicator. Crosswind from the right at 12 knots. Not ideal, but manageable. Adjusting for crosswind, she announced to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. She applied slight left rudder to keep the nose pointed straight down the runway while the plane's body angled slightly into the wind. This was the crab technique her father had drilled into her hundreds of times. 1,500 feet. Speed 145 knots. Slightly fast. Reducing throttle. Mia's tiny hands made micro-adjustments. Too high and the plane would stall. Too low and they'd slam into the runway. The margin for error was almost zero. She could feel sweat running down her back. Her purple hoodie stuck to her skin. But her hands remained steady on the yoke. 1,000 feet. An automated voice in the cockpit began calling out altitude. 1,000. Mia's breathing was rapid but controlled. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Just like her father taught her. Stay calm, Mia, she whispered to herself. You've done this 1,000 times. But not in a real plane, a voice in her head screamed. Not with real people. Not with real consequences. She pushed the thought away. 800 feet. Flaps full. 40 degrees. The plane's nose pitched up slightly as the flaps extended fully. 500. The ground was rushing up now. She could see individual vehicles. People. Buildings. 400. Every instinct screamed at her to pull up. To abort. To save herself. But 161 other people were depending on her. 300. She remembered her father's words, the last 200 feet are the hardest. Everything happens fast. Trust the instruments. Trust your hands. 200. The runway was right there. Massive. Gray. Real. 100. Mia pulled back gently on the yoke. The plane's nose lifted. This was the flare, the critical moment before touchdown. 50. 40. Her father's voice, smooth, Mia. Gentle. Like you're setting down an egg. 30. 20. 10. The wheels touched the runway with a heavy thud. Not perfect. Not smooth. The plane bounced once. Mia fought the instinct to panic. She had practiced this. Bounced landings happen. The plane settled again. The wheels grabbed the runway. They were down. But they were moving at 130 knots on a runway. Still extremely dangerous. Deploying speed brakes. Mia called out, pulling the lever. Panels on the wings shot up, creating drag. Thrust reversers. She pulled the throttle levers all the way back. The engines roared as they reversed direction, pushing against the plane's momentum. Brakes. Mia pushed on the pedals with all her strength. Her small body barely had enough weight to apply full pressure. The plane was slowing. 100 knots. 80 knots. 60 knots. But the end of the runway was approaching fast. Come on, Mia whispered. 40 knots. 30 knots. They were 500 feet from the end of the runway. 20 knots. 10 knots. The plane finally stopped with just 200 feet of runway remaining. Mia sat back in the seat, her entire body shaking. "We're down," she said quietly. "We're safe." For a moment, there was complete silence on the plane. Then the cabin exploded in applause, cheers, and sobbing relief. People were hugging strangers. Crying. Laughing. Some couldn't speak at all. The businessman in 23B collapsed to his knees in the aisle, sobbing uncontrollably. "Thank you, God. Thank you." The teenage boy who had been recording was shaking so hard he dropped his phone. He didn't even care. He was alive. The elderly woman with the rosary kissed the beads and made the sign of the cross, tears streaming down her weathered face. The mother with 2 children held them so tight they protested. "Mommy, you're squishing us." But she couldn't let go. Wouldn't let go. A young couple in row 12 kissed like it was their wedding day. They had been flying to Vegas to get married. Now they would actually make it to their wedding. The businesswoman who had protested so loudly about letting Mia fly was crying quietly in her seat, ashamed of her earlier words. She would write Mia a letter later, apologizing. Thanking her. Asking for forgiveness. Patricia rushed into the cockpit and pulled Mia into a fierce hug. "You did it. Oh my God, you did it." Mia started crying then. All the fear, all the pressure, all the weight of what had just happened crashed over her like a wave. Her small body shook with sobs. She had held it together for 47 minutes. She had been strong, focused, calm. But now, with the plane safely on the ground, the dam broke. "I was so scared," she sobbed into Patricia's shoulder. "I didn't think I could do it. I thought we were going to crash. I thought everyone was going to die. But we didn't," Patricia said, her own voice breaking. "We didn't crash because of you. I know, sweetie. I know you were scared. But you were so brave. You saved us all." Patricia held her and let her cry. This was still a child, she realized. A child who had just done something no child should ever have to do. The other flight attendants came into the cockpit. All of them were crying. They surrounded Mia in a group hug, thanking her over and over. "You're a hero," one of them said. "You're a miracle," said another. Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane within seconds. Paramedics rushed on board. Both pilots were taken to the hospital immediately. Dr. Patterson went with them, still trying to figure out what had caused their simultaneous collapse. Mia was escorted off the plane by airport security, wrapped in a blanket despite the Las Vegas heat. She was shaking. News crews were already gathering. Someone had leaked what happened. An 11-year-old girl landed the plane. Is this confirmed? We need to get this on air now. Within an hour, the story was national news. Within 2 hours, it was international. The National Transportation Safety Board launched an immediate investigation. 3 days later, they announced their findings. A malfunction in the aircraft's air conditioning system had caused a carbon monoxide leak into the cockpit. The pilots had been slowly poisoned during the flight. Because the leak was isolated to the cockpit, no passengers or cabin crew were affected. The electrical fluctuations Mia had noticed. Those were early warning signs of the failing system. Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Stevens both made full recoveries. The carbon monoxide levels had been high enough to cause unconsciousness but not permanent damage. When Rodriguez woke up in the hospital and learned what had happened, he asked to meet Mia. They met in a private room at the hospital. The veteran pilot looked at the small girl who had saved his life and the lives of everyone on board. "You did something I'm not sure I could have done at your age," he said. "You saved my life. You saved everyone." Mia looked down at her hands. "I was just doing what my dad taught me." "Your father must be an incredible teacher." "He is," Mia said softly. When Mia finally arrived in Los Angeles, both her parents were waiting. Her mother ran to her, sobbing, pulling her into her arms. "I'm so sorry," Linda cried. "I'm so sorry I doubted you. I'm so sorry I fought against the training." "It's okay, Mom," Mia said. David wheeled himself over. Tears were streaming down his face. "I'm so proud of you," he said. "So incredibly proud." Mia knelt down and hugged her father. "You were right, Dad. I did thank you." That night, Mia told her parents everything. Every moment. Every decision. Every fear. "I was terrified the whole time," she admitted. "My hands wouldn't stop shaking." "But you did it anyway," David said. "That's what courage is, Mia. Doing what needs to be done even when you're scared." The story of Flight 2847 became a global phenomenon. Mia appeared on every major news network. Her interview on 60 Minutes got the highest ratings of the year. She met the president. Received commendations from aviation organizations worldwide. Her first press conference was overwhelming. Hundreds of reporters. Cameras everywhere. Microphones thrust in her face. "Mia, what were you thinking when you took the controls? Were you scared? Did you think you were going to die? What did your father say when he heard the news?" Mia sat at the podium, her father beside her in his wheelchair, her mother on the other side. She looked so small behind the microphone cluster. "I was very scared," she said honestly. "But my dad always told me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what needs to be done even when you're scared." A reporter asked, "Do you feel like a hero?" Mia thought about this for a long moment. "No," she said finally. "I feel like someone who was prepared when something bad happened. My dad is the real hero. He's the one who taught me everything. He's the one who believed in me when nobody else did." David reached over and squeezed her hand, tears in his eyes. The video of that press conference went viral. 10 million views in the first day. 50 million by the end of the week. Schools around the world started using Mia's story in their curriculum. She became a symbol of preparation, courage, and the power of education. Aviation experts analyzed every decision she made. They were stunned by her precision. "She executed a textbook emergency landing," one expert said on CNN. "Better than some professional pilots I've seen." The fact that she's 11 years old is almost incomprehensible. Boeing, the manufacturer of the aircraft, invited Mia to their facility. They wanted to understand exactly how she had learned to fly their plane. Airbus, their competitor, did the same. Flight schools started developing programs for young people, inspired by Mia's story. The FAA changed their protocols. They implemented new requirements for cockpit air quality monitoring. The malfunction that had nearly killed everyone on Flight 2847 would never happen again. But perhaps the most touching response came from children. Mia received thousands of letters from children around the world. "You inspired me to learn something new. You showed me that age doesn't matter if you work hard. You're my hero." But perhaps the most meaningful letter came from Patricia, the flight attendant. "Dear Mia," it read. "I was wrong to doubt you. I was wrong to see you as just a child. You taught me that wisdom and courage aren't about age, they're about preparation, dedication, and heart. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for showing me what's possible. You are the bravest person I've ever met." Today, Mia is still just 11 years old. She returned to school, returned to her normal life as much as possible. Walking into school the Monday after the landing was surreal. Everyone knew who she was. Kids pointed. Whispered. Asked for autographs. Her teacher didn't know what to say. How do you teach math to a student who just landed a commercial jet? But Mia didn't want special treatment. She just wanted to be a normal kid again. "Can we please just do regular school stuff?" she asked her teacher quietly. Her teacher smiled with relief. Of course. But normal was hard to find now. News vans camped outside her house. Reporters called constantly. Book publishers offered millions for her story. Movie studios wanted to make films about her. David and Linda protected her as much as they could. They said no to most requests. They wanted Mia to have a childhood, not just be famous. She doesn't want to be a commercial pilot. The experience was too traumatic, too intense. She has nightmares sometimes about those 47 minutes. In the nightmares, the runway isn't there when she needs it. Or the plane won't slow down. Or she makes a mistake and everyone dies. She wakes up sweating, crying, her heart pounding. Her parents got her a therapist. Dr. Sarah Martinez specializes in trauma. She helps Mia process what happened. What you did was extraordinary, Dr. Martinez told her in their first session. But it was also traumatic. You're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to have nightmares. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But Mia does still fly in the simulator with her father. It's their special time together. Their bond. Every Sunday morning, they go to the garage. David wheels himself to his position. Mia climbs into the pilot's seat. They fly together. Sometimes they practice emergencies. Sometimes they just cruise through virtual skies, talking about life. Do you regret teaching me? Mia asked one Sunday. David looked at his daughter. Never, he said firmly. You saved 162 lives, Mia. Including mine and yours. How could I ever regret that? But look what it did to me, Mia said. The nightmares. The fear. You're getting help for that, David said. And you'll heal. But those 162 people are alive because of what I taught you. Their families still have them. That's worth everything. And sometimes, when she's flying in the simulator, she remembers that day. The weight of the yoke in her hands. The runway approaching. The lives depending on her. And she remembers what her father always said. You never know when your moment will come. The moment when everything you've learned, everything you've prepared for, will be tested. And when that moment comes, you'll either be ready or you won't. Mia was ready. And because she was, 162 people went home to their families that night.